Pay close attention. The news you are about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, today in the news we have more on the fight against ISIS. We're also going to look at those opioid/painkillers. We also have the recent military moves in and around the Great River Euphrates in the Middle East. And if you are not yet cleaning your fruits and vegetables, you definitely will start after seeing one of the articles that we'll discuss with you today. Well, trends come and go, but this one is violent and causing injuries and fear across the country. We haven't heard much about it for a while, Katan, but this video shows young people are still participating in the knockout game. Now that's when the players target a random victim who they hit in the head as hard as they can to see if they can knock them to the ground with one blow. Now we must warn you that the video you are about to see is very disturbing.
Wow. Well, an 11-year-old Navajo Nation girl is dead. Her and her 9-year-old brother were lured into a car after school with the promise of going to the movies. Instead, this 27-year-old New Mexico man, Tom Bigay, drove them into the desert where he separated the two children and sexually assaulted the girl. Then he proceeded to beat her with a crowbar until she died.
Well, after the assault and murder of the young girl, Bigay abandoned her brother. Now, police later arrested Bigay. He could face life in prison.
When the Graves family gave their grandson Caden a bottle of Dr. Pepper, that wasn't all they were giving him. The 3-year-old drank half the soda while on the car ride, so they put the cap back on and didn't notice anything strange until the next morning. Floating in a half-empty 20-ounce bottle of Dr. Pepper was some sort of rodent. Ooh. Yeah, that's right. Half gone already. Yes, you heard that right. Beady eyes, small ears, and a tail pretty much gives it away.
Well, John Graves, the 3-year-old's grandfather, told local news reporters, pretty good-sized mouse. It's about 3 inches long with a big tail. You think about rabies, you think of dirty, filthy rodents, he said. You know, what did he, referring to his grandson, ingest? Yeah. Well, concerned for Caden's health, they called their pediatrician to have a checkup for him. Now, they also contacted the state of Texas and the CDC as well.
Yeah, that's got to be a little scary. The family also contacted Dr. Pepper. A spokesperson for the company told them they want the bottle so they can run tests on it. However, the Graves family wants to get their own testing done before turning the bottle over to the Dr. Pepper company.
Well, the Department of Justice, along with the Department of Education, have issued guidelines to all public schools in America, ordering them to allow any transgender person to have access to any bathroom or other facilities on school grounds. And that, Katan, includes locker rooms and shower rooms.
Oh, that's problem waiting to occur, but it doesn't stop there, Jeff. You know, if you're heading off to college next year, if someone was to do so, and you're a young man who identifies himself as a woman, well, you can say that you would like to stay in the all-girls dorm. Yeah, that's right. As you can imagine, this really changes everything.
Well, the basis of the administration's decision is from Title IX of the Civil Rights Act. However, Title IX doesn't say anything at all about gender identity or even about transgender. It simply talks about gender discrimination. So basically, Title IX is being interpreted as transgender protection and creating a whole new class of people, but that's not what it's referring to.
Seems like a lot of the things that they're pushing for kind of kind of is off the path of what we would normally call civil anymore.
Right.
And it creates a lot of confusion. Well, now this is not talking about people who have actually undergone surgery to have their gender changed. That only accounts for 0.3% of the population. This number is small compared to the number of people who identify as transgender. Well, the response of many schools is that they don't even have this problem, but now the government has made it an issue for everyone.
And if they didn't have the problem before, they're probably going to have it now, allowing boys and girls to use whatever bathroom, lockers, shower rooms they want.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of angry parents as a result as well.
And just to clarify, this is not a law. This is the Justice and Education Department telling schools you better allow this, and if you don't comply with Title IX, then we will cut your funding. In fact, they can pull all the federal dollars that head into the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the public high schools and so forth.
Well, gender uncertainty isn't the only thing that has people scratching their heads this week. Larry McGee has our coverage on a man who apparently decided to poison the food at a popular grocery store just because. And several other stories, including some of the latest on the U.S. military. Larry, what do you have for us on this report?
The Federal Bureau of Investigations has got involved after a Detroit man acknowledged willfully contaminating food in several grocery stores. The man is reported to have hit at least 12 locations before the spree was brought to a halt, thanks in part to tips provided by the public. The man admittedly sprayed a combination of mice poison, hand sanitizer, and water on the produce of a list of stores in the Ann Arbor area, including Meijer, Plum, and Whole Foods, all over the course of a 14-day time span. Citizens are now understandably wary, the biggest question being just how long the man was involved in the deed before being apprehended by authorities. Ultimately, it was a Whole Foods employee who finally spotted the man and reported his activities, sparking the investigation, and Whole Foods itself is reported to have taken many steps following the incident to try and ensure the safety of its patrons. State health officials are said to not be expecting any sickness related to the incident, but the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development has released a statement cautioning citizens to discard any food from the salad bars, olive bars, and ready-to-eat hot and cold food areas from all of the affected stores purchased between mid-March and the end of April. Those being affected by the warning alarm of pain were the subject of a recent interview with David Kessler, a renowned U.S. physician and former head of the FDA, who calls opioid prescriptions by orthodox practitioners one of the greatest mistakes of modern medicine. Opioid use has exploded over the course of the last 20 years. Millions of Americans are now consuming them, and a large share of those individuals are reportedly addicted. When it comes down to blame, Dr. Kessler mentions a list of accountability ranging from the FDA to big pharma and physicians, none of which Kessler believes saw opioids for what they are. From 1999 to 2014, opioid sales quadrupled in the U.S., along with overdose deaths related to their consumption. In describing the phenomenon, Dr. Kessler explains the school of medical thought, which regarded pain as a fifth vital sign to be medicated until it was alleviated, and that thinking, the doctor says, was a costly mistake. Present records show 78 Americans die every day from painkiller overdose. It is being called a crisis, yet there has reportedly only been limited efforts made by the CDC to intervene through prescription guidelines, and there are serious concerns as to whether or not their efforts, which fell short of establishing any mandates, are actually capable of affecting change. Opium-based pharmaceuticals such as Oxycontin have generated more than $35 billion since their introduction in the 80s. And Dr. Kessler says it was the inappropriate promotion of these drugs by pharmaceutical companies that contributed significantly to the epidemic, in so much as the same companies took a small sliver of science and widely promoted opium-based drugs as being non-addictive, and that, the former FDA head says, is untrue. The truth is, the war in Iraq is just as much a concern today as it ever was. After dismantling the country's government, the U.S. has been attempting to train soldiers and establish a strong Iraqi army for the last 13 years now. Effort has come with a $30 billion price tag for American taxpayers, and analysts don't foresee an end to the fiasco anytime soon. U.S. soldiers convey frustration at what they perceive to be a lack of similar motivation and aggression on behalf of Iraqi soldiers. That, they believe, has led to multiple tours for many of them, having to return to assist with the same problems. Outdated machinery and insufficient artillery are also being cited as Iraqi soldiers struggle to contend with ISIS, whose recent attack on Baghdad is reported to have produced the worst bloodshed the city has seen this year. U.S. trainer and Sergeant First Class Josh McSpadden believes, however, that the attacks will galvanize the recruits that he's been given to train, since they'll undoubtedly be angry and want to take their cities back over. Some are finding it hard to get over many of the other alarming reports populating the headlines this week concerning Army, intelligence, and police forces, including a manual recently released by the U.S. Department of Defense that reportedly calls for U.S. soldiers to wage war against Islam. Along with that, the CIA is in search for yet another mole amongst its ranks, guilty this time for providing information concerning a recent Al-Qaeda airplane bombing, all the way down to the local level, where a Georgia police officer is being called to task for kicking a pregnant woman in the stomach, an action which, needless to say, is just sick. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Boy, that is going to be hard to justify, Katan, an officer kicking a pregnant woman in the stomach. It's horrible. Well, Romania has a new NATO missile defense system, and Russia is not too excited about it. The two U.S. F-22 fighter jets on the base in Romania are designed to send a clear message to Russia. Now, U.S. General Timothy Ray said that the two aircraft, along with the 220 servicemen stationed there, are there to ensure their allies deter aggression and to stabilize security and to highlight our commitment to NATO.
Romania is also where Europe built the missile defense system, and another one is being built in Poland. Now, Russia and NATO's relationship went south about 2 years ago when Russia annexed Crimea. Experts say that as long as they continue to hold the area, as well as continuing to put military forces there, NATO will continue to have a strong presence. In spite of this tit-for-tat buildup, experts say there's no reason to fear a new Cold War.
Bruno Lette of German Marshall Fund said that the West and Russia have mutual interest, including nuclear proliferation, the fight against terrorism, and even Syria. The next NATO summit takes place in July, and it's there they'll discuss the need to increase its presence closer to Russia's borders.
Well, Moscow said that it will work to neutralize the threat posed by the missile system in Europe, that defense system. In fact, Putin said, now that these ballistic missile threats have arisen, we are forced to think how to neutralize emerging threats to the Russian Federation. Putin also said that the missile defense system threatens global security as a whole and is aimed at blunting Russia's nuclear arsenal. Well, these remarks came after missile defense system in Romania and Poland were put online, which we just talked about. Of course, they're expecting it to become fully operational in 2018. And that defense system, between the two of them, were around $800 million.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the U.S. and NATO claim that the system is not aimed at Russia, but Moscow views it as a security threat at its front door.
Oh, sure. Well, the CIA is fighting with the Pentagon in Syria. That's right. The CIA-backed group Ferzan al-Haq, or Knights of Righteousness, were reportedly forced out of their position by the Syrian Democratic Forces, who are backed by the Pentagon. That's right. All of this fighting backed by U.S. agencies is being done at U.S. taxpayers' expense. This report comes as President Obama authorized a plan to train and arm new Syrian anti-government fighters. Let's not forget, though, Jeff, when we reported on it not that long ago, what occurred to the last plan to train and arm fighters in Syria. That didn't go so well.
That's right. 5,400 fighters were planned for 2015 with a budget of $500 million. Out of those 5,400, only about 4 or 5 fighters remained, with 70 defecting and many traded off weapons to al-Qaeda affiliates. And the White House, in the end, had to admit that the program to train and equip fighters didn't live up to its expectations. I would imagine not 4 or 5 out of 5,400 at a cost of $500 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
So many are scratching their heads, of course, asking, will it work this time? And if so, how come? What's going to be the difference?
Yeah, like they say, the proof is in the pudding. As researchers continue to search for a cure for cancer, one scientist has developed a way to fight fire with fire by using a debilitating disease to fight a type of brain cancer. For 2 years, clinical trials have been ongoing. And here's one woman's story. In 2011, Stephanie Lipscomb was a nursing student who was experiencing headaches. And after some testing, she was told that she had glioblastoma, which was a tumor in her brain that was the size of a tennis ball. Subsequently, she had 98% of the tumor removed, but in 2012, she was told that her cancer was back.
So with no other options, doctors tried a new procedure, an experiment with the well-known polio virus. Molecular biologist Matthias Gromeyer was the developer. He modified the virus's genes by taking out a certain part of it and replacing it with a strand of the common cold virus. Now, this way, the virus can't cause paralysis or death, but because it can't reproduce in normal cells. But what it does do in cancer cells, in the process, it releases toxins that actually start to kill the cancer cells.
So in that process, in the actual cell, it reproduces in there, but not in the actual human body. So interesting. This process also amazingly awakens the immune system to the cancer that it never noticed before. All human cancers, he said, had a protective shield that makes them invisible to the human immune system. So this enables the immune system to do its job in eliminating foreign invaders from the human body. As a result, Stephanie Lipscomb's tumor shrunk after 21 months of treatment until it was gone. 3 years later, still no cancer in her brain. All that's visible as of now in CT scans is just the old surgical scar.
Wow. And lastly, another scandal uncovered could land the leaker some jail time. Well, the latest leaked Vatican documents has caused quite a stir. The leaks expose corruption in the church, detailing financial waste and wrongdoing and the attempts to sabotage the Pope's reform efforts. Author of the book Merchants in the Temple and journalist Gianluigi Nuzzi spoke to RT's Sophie Shevardnadski. He said in the interview, ever since the Pope took office, there has been a soft revolution within the Vatican.
There are many problems with the Vatican's financial management as the Pope tries to make the Vatican more transparent. The Vatican's accounting records have always been shady, he said, and there's still cases of money laundering within the Vatican Bank. There's property owned by the Vatican that's being rented out for free. So, he continued, there are many problems that the Pope is trying to solve.
When asked if he thought that fixing these problems was the Pope's cross to bear, he responded with, in times past, the Pope's held more of a pastoral duty, but Francis is wanting to be more involved with affairs of the state, its records, spending, and so forth. So this is causing a battle within the church, but I don't believe that the Pope will lose this battle because it's not just the Pope, but all of the Catholic believers behind him, he continued.
He also said that the Pope doesn't have enough power to do this himself. He's trying to change the mind within the Vaticans of the cardinals and those who officiate there, and he can't do anything alone. He needs people. He also said that he believes people outside the Vatican support the Pope more than those within the city's gates. It's not easy to make people within the Vatican adopt the new way of thinking because their mindset dates back, and he said, centuries. It dates back centuries, and it would be impossible to change it in 2 years.
Another problem, he continued, is that the cardinals within the Vatican don't want to share their powers with the new agencies created by the Pope. In regards to the pressure put on those who leak information about the Vatican to journalists, he said, "I'm surprised that a country that doesn't arrest anyone, not even pedophiles, would arrest a person on the charges of leaking information to journalists."
Interesting. An investigative commission who requested records from those who deal with canonization, of course he never got those records, later discovered that there was a practice of canonizing people for a price of merely 750,000 euros. What a deal. Now, Mr. Newsy said he didn't know who benefited from that money, but he knew it didn't go to help the poor. Well, it's clear to see that the world and all its inhabitants are being driven into total and complete confusion, while their care and concern for one another has pretty much ceased to exist. Now, there is a solution, but you're not going to be able to find it at the Vatican. They're too busy trying to plug leaks in their ship that's currently sinking. Although this might seem like the days of Noah, there is a place prepared for those who want to escape the troubles that are soon to come, and a promise of true peace through laws that bring lasting peace. That place is the house of Yahweh, and the one guiding those to safety is Yisrael Hawkins. Now, do I have your attention? Well, here's how you can find out more information for the saving of yourself and loved ones.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You could also visit our website at www.ypnnews.com. For any emails to the House of Yahweh, you can email them at info@yahweh.com. And for any calls coming from outside the United States, please call the number on your screen now. And once again, don't forget to go to www.yisraelsays.com for the latest and greatest study tool available today, the Yisrael Says program, where you can ask any question and get a scriptural answer.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, the one who brings forth the message of peace, Yisrael Hawkins. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.